Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us today for the final seminar in our three-part Market Ready India series. Austrade and Wine Australia are providing this briefing in partnership, and we'd also like to thank Australian Grape and Wine for its participation in today's seminar. So today we'll provide you with a deeper understanding of Indian beverage consumption trends and the Indian wine sector. We'll also discuss strategic engagement with the Indian wine sector, along with the resources and support to assist producers to enter this export market, and indeed other markets if you decide that India isn't in your immediate export plans. But before we begin, let's acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land.
We acknowledge the lands of the traditional custodians across Australia. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples' continuing connection to land, water and sky country. We acknowledge the wine regions and hundreds of different nations around this continent, and the ancient soils on which we stand and grow. From the Wadani saltwater peoples of the Margaret River in our west, to the East Coast Sunrise people of the Yuin Nation, and the Southern Island and Saltbush peoples of the Nione peoples of Tasmania. Today and always, we pay our deep respects to the custodians, those who went before and those who will follow, as the knowledge holders of tomorrow. This is Australia.
And I'd also like to acknowledge that we're coming to you from the traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains and pay respect to elders past and present. And we also extend that respect to other Aboriginal language groups and other First Nations. So I'm Prue Adams. Many of you might remember me from the ABC program Landline. I was a journalist there. So before we get into the content for today, I'll discuss how you can interact with us. At the right of your screen, you will find a chat and a Q&A function. To join the conversation, you can post directly into the chat. To ask a question, simply click on the Add to Q&A button. If you have any tech issues, we recommend that you refresh your URL or browser or add a question into the chat. So stay tuned for our Q&A session at the end of this seminar to have your questions answered by Tony Battling, the CEO of Australian Grape and Wine, John Southwell, Australia's new Trade and Investment Commissioner for India and South Asia, and from Wine Australia, the General Manager for Marketing, Paul Turali, along with Regional Manager Asia Pacific, Sarah Roberts. A recording of today's seminar will also be emailed to all attendees and be made available on Wine Australia's website. So you'll see a question pop up on your screen around about now. We'd appreciate it if you could tell us if you are currently exporting to India, or if you are considering exporting to India in the next 5 years, or if you are unsure about this market and want to learn more, which of course is what this market briefing series is all about. And we'll share these results with you before our Q&A session at the end of this seminar. So, now I would like to introduce our first presenter, Nita Kapoor, who will provide an in-depth analysis of key consumer trends for the India beverage market and the current state of play in the Indian wine sector. As the Chief Executive Officer for the International Spirits and Wines Association of India, Nita has more than 30 years' experience in leadership roles with a focus on building brands and projects in the social sector since 2005. Nita has been recognised in the top 50 influential marketing women in India and is among the top 22 women angel investors in India at Indian Angels Network. Before we hand over to Nita though, let's hear from some on-premise trade representatives in Mumbai, New Delhi and Bangalore on the importance of pricing and education initiatives in the development of this growing wine market.
I tell people very often that coming to a great restaurant with alcohol should be like a 60-minute holiday. And I think that's what my vision has been, to give people in India, guests coming here, tourists, that kind of experience. Wine is so women-friendly. So we have a lot of girls coming out wanting to feel safe in an environment. Wine lends itself perfectly with that. We sell close to 200 bottles of wine a day. So majority of the sales in terms of alcohol is wine. And I think one of the ways we've been able to do that is we've priced it reasonably.
Now, one of the things that we're attempting to do in our wine bar is that instead of having a formula of selling wine at a rate 4 times what we buy it, we're trying to say that our buying cost should be between 40 and 50%. We put a good price to the end consumer. But I want consumers to not be daunted by wine. I want it to be no different than drinking a German beer or a Belgian beer. Now, one of the things we're doing in this restaurant is we have wine by glass machines. And you're not always sure how a hotel or restaurant has kept the wine. So our purpose in using machines is also to have that correct serving temperature of 8 or 9 degrees for a white or 18 for red, and to have measured portions and sell tasting portions, and therefore put wine on the same footing as spirits being sold by the peg, that we sell a lot of things by the glass or by tasting portions.
It's unfair to ask people to drink a wine by the bottle if they haven't tried it by the glass. We give 50 wines by the glass so that people have enough trial of wines from different regions, different grapes, different price points. I think digital's been incredible in terms of pulling audiences from all over and making things approachable. You know, in the Indian consumer loves learning, and I think simple things like, if I talk about Australia, that Barossa as a region is known for Shiraz, or the soil of Coonawarra is really, really old and interesting and plays a big role in the wine that comes from there. I'm not crazy about is the wine really popular in India. It's my job to make it popular, and I really think that there's a big market there, because when the entry-level guy has to upgrade, he's not going to jump from a $10 bottle of wine to a $100 bottle of wine. You need something in between. So I would really urge Australian suppliers. It's a big market. People do love wine. They know wine. And there is a market for great mid to higher end wines.
Bangalore has very prominent food and beverage clubs. There are members who are very, very well traveled. They do cyclic events at different hotels, different standalone restaurants and bars. One thing I like to highlight is the culture to experience wine with local food is definitely on the go, and there are a lot of consumers who want to have a glass of wine in the evening, want to entertain their friends before they go back home on the way from work. For all the hotels, including ours, we have a great collection and offering for wines by the glass.
Once, along with the chef, we decide what the food and beverage philosophy for that restaurant is. We reach out to each of the vendors who are importing wines from different parts of the world. However, we try to make the list as expensive as possible in terms of we want to have the old world wines, the new world, keep a large bouquet, a varietal of wines from each part of the globe. Festive for sure. I think post October the wine sales go higher, because we are just about reaching the Christmas, New Year festive period. A lot of people are moving in and out of the city.
I think each city has that pyramid going on where you have wine clubs and wine dinners and wine tastings, etc. going on all the time, and you'll find that there are a common number of people that come to the same tastings all the time. Now that should not be the case. You can't keep preaching to the converted. Alright, so you have to get more people in there. Now, I think Bombay seems to have that potential of becoming very well versed with wine in a shorter period of time. I think overall people like fruit-driven wines that are value for money for the most part, and Australia to a large degree also caters to that, but also makes the fine wine more complex stuff. What people perhaps don't know is the fine wine complex stuff that Australia makes, and they probably identify with Australia with more of your, everyday sunshine in a bottle kind of wine. We need to find a way to change that.
So thank you for the opportunity and for giving us the chance to talk about the the challenges and the opportunities for the wine sector in India. Namaste, my name is Neeta Kapoor and I represent International Spirits and Wine Association of the country here in India. We are essentially recognized as the apex body for Indian premium alcoholic beverage industry. We have pretty keen insight on government policy, and even though I have to say so myself, instrumental in shaping industry perspective and driving best practices to promote responsible use of alcohol beverage. Our members include Bacardi, Beam, Suntory, Brown Forman, Campari, Diageo, Moët Hennessy, Pernod Ricard, and William Grant. In fact, all the global players with commercial operations in the country. We represent all spirits, excluding beer. In India, the industry is broadly divided into three, and the same would also apply for wines, and therefore a categorization of the industry is important for you. On my left is what we call the Indian-made foreign liquor. These are domestic brands on the right-hand corner for you. At the bottom, which is 100 Pipers, Lawson, Black and White, these are what we call bottled in India, which is essentially a blend of bulk imports being imported into the country and then blending operations taking place. Most of these trademarks are GI tagged, as you would be aware. On the right-hand side is completely finished products, what we call bottled in origin products. And these are essentially, they are imported as finished products into the country. So therefore, if you look at it, even in wines, you're going to have a similar structure. At this point of time, the wine sector is really divided into two, which is clearly to say domestic wines and bottled in origin wines. ISWAI members are, and it is important, given that spirits is a state subject, it is important to ensure that you have the manufacturing footprint in most of the states that you would like to operate in. This allows for cost efficiencies and brings in a whole host of advantages in the value chain. So the spirits industry, and particularly ISWAI members, have roughly about 88 manufacturing units, and 98% of the business operations and products are being produced out of India. So that should give you an idea about when you are looking in India, domestic production would be extremely, extremely important for you. Our scope of work, essentially, like I explained earlier, is with respect to the state governments. Therefore, we look at taxation, we address operational issues, ease of doing business issues. We also work on FTAs and currently are engaged in the India-UK FTA. Prior to that, we were engaged on the India-Australia ECTA. We work alongside the states and governments. We also have our own programs with respect to responsible drinking. We work with various associations and NGO bodies here. We interact with the media on behalf of our members. We look at industry associations like CII and FICCI. We also conduct our own market researches as and when there is a need to do so. And we are in touch with the public interest groups in order to ensure that all bases are covered and when we come to creating an advocacy plan for our members and being proactive. Domestically, 80% of the industry is controlled by the domestic brands. And much of this growth could also be attributed to the favorable wine policy for domestic produced wines, and I'm going to come to that very quickly. Simple to say that domestic wines dominate the Indian wine market due to their lower price and subsidies, and obviously higher availability. Imported wines face an import tariff, which severely limits the availability of foreign wines in the market. Add to that the customs duties, the cascading impact of the state's duty. So by the time the the imported brand reaches the hands of the consumer, it is safe to say that that would be at least a 3x to 4x price difference between the domestic produced wines. And here's to give you an idea. If the industry was a total of 2.8 million that I talked about in my previous slide, 0.58, that's 580,000 cases, is all that is really about imported wine. So we're roughly talking about 33% of the total industry today is imported wines. Going forward, you could look at this as half glass full or half glass empty. But here is India in terms of comparison to the biggest wine consuming countries. No brainer that we are the lowest considering our preferences for browns. Yeah. And the fact that 98% is domestic produced. So you must have a fair idea that it has taken India decades to be able to come to a wine industry size of about 2.8 million. This is to give you an idea because there was a question that was given to me in terms of what is the popularity of Australia vis-a-vis other importing countries, and this is Australia clearly is the market leader in that small sliver of opportunity that I earlier talked about, which was about 580,000 cases. Of that 580,000 imported cases, really, Australia has about 37% share. If I look at the key consumption and trends that I can share with you within the time frame is that at present, Indian consumers have a strong preference for red wines. And I think that's where Australia has an opportunity. 49% of Indian consumers prefer red wines, followed by fortified wines. White wine is about 13%, and the bubblies are at 3%. If I look at, now this is a very important slide for you to understand, and I'll try and take a few more minutes on this. So, everybody is going to talk to you about the pot of gold, which is essentially to say an estimated 485 million consumers are above the drinking age, and voila, that's over 1/3 of the country's total population and about 1.3 billion. Now, that's a huge number. But please bear in mind that the market and the consumption that's taking place for wines is essentially only taking place in metro cities. It is an urban phenomena. And even if I had to drill down which are the metro cities, I'm essentially going to be looking at primarily West and a bit of, so here's it, Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, Pune, and Hyderabad are really, they're just about beginning as trends. Importantly, you need to understand why does Mumbai and Bangalore have a significant amount, because these are both states, which is Maharashtra and Karnataka, which have a very progressive policy towards wines. And hence you find these two states becoming the market, the wine capital, or the wine producing regions of the country. And given the supply chain challenges, the markets really available to them are really metro cities. And hence, over the years, you will find that these are the metro cities that have really developed. Delhi has, in fact, been more of a cosmopolitan evolution, becoming faster between Delhi and Bombay and Mumbai. And therefore, Delhi essentially has no distilleries, but has, its products coming in more from its proximity to Maharashtra. There was another question that was asked, which was to say, what is the on and off price premise sale? And I'm just taking 2019 as a base year because that will give you an idea, because pandemic would have distorted everything. So let's stick to 2019 and we will see that the trends are coming back in 2022 onwards. As far as wine is concerned, almost 60% of wine is consumed on premise and about 40% is consumed off premise. And that's a key point to notice. Unlike beer, which is almost the converse of wines, which is So, in terms of beer, it's it is essentially to say 60-40, and in spirits, it is essentially 85-15, but improving very fast. This was broadly to give you an idea about who are the domestic wines. You know these, so I'm not really going to spend a lot of time. But the market really is between the top three players as far as Sula, Fratelli, and Grover is concerned. That is where the market is as far as domestic wines are concerned. And this was just to give you an idea of over a 5-year perspective, and you can see that exactly my point, which is essentially to say that you're looking at very, very small market size here in India. I'm very quickly going to share with you in terms of the wine production in India. Now, there are about 60 wineries in India, with wine productions, like I said earlier, concentrated in Maharashtra, Karnataka, Goa, and a bit in Himachal Pradesh. Yeah. Most wineries and production are concentrated in the Nashik region in Maharashtra, which is considered to be the home for countries. So clearly, Maharashtra and Karnataka as states have had the first mover advantage, and the policy has enabled that, right? So these states are essentially favoring some of the examples in terms of favoring the policy for domestic produced wine. Also, a point to be added here is that according to the Consumer Protection Act of India, alcohol beverage and all its subcategories are not allowed to advertise. So introductions of new brands is going to be a challenge. These are some of the kind of supports in terms of expected supports by the state of Karnataka. I've explained Maharashtra. So clearly you're talking about capital subsidy. You're looking at exemption of electricity tariff. You're looking at label registration fees to be waived off. You're looking at permission of sale through taverns. And there is now established Karnataka Wine Board that essentially conducts market promotion activities for Karnataka wines. But not to forget that if I was producing in Karnataka and wanting to sell in Maharashtra, then I'm going to be ending up paying Maharashtra an import fee over and above my costs. If I had to be producing in Himachal Pradesh and selling in Delhi, then I would have to pay import fees. So what happens is that other than the subsidies that you may want, or you may want to collaborate with your partners, it is essentially the duties that are being levied on the imported products, be they bottled in origin or bottled in India, is actually kind of skews the economy in the favor of domestic brands. Similar subsidies for Maharashtra. And the other states that are really coming up is Madhya Pradesh, Kerala, Himachal, and Uttar Pradesh. But you must understand that while states give you and will consider subsidies as well as favorable wine policy, the opportunity of metro cities within a state is limited, number one. Number two is this is going to be a long haul, gradual conversion towards wines, and therefore the ability of the operations as well as the players to sustain and have an ongoing sustained investment is really going to be the key ask. And once again, the markets then are only in that domestic state. Unless you would say that, I can essentially look at other states and I can have that pricing that can allow me to compete with domestic brands. So I guess I have, I think, overshot my time. I'm going to summarize it to say, number one, India it depends upon which way you would want to look at it, half glass full, half glass empty. It's a small market. Markets are in the urban centers. This is more a state subject, therefore cost of operations can become quite expensive if you want to travel from one state to another. Sector is undergoing consumer protection advertising restrictions, therefore launching and introducing new brands is going to be an issue. We have supply chain challenges in terms of transporting bulk wines, and hence therefore you find that the markets are more concentrated in one state. Having said that, I still, I'm an eternal optimist, and therefore I would say that look at it from a test marketing basis, consider partnerships, collaborations on a more a joint venture. Do look at bulk wines, because that possibly is the lowest hanging fruit to test the potential of the domestic markets. So thank you once again, and namaste.
And thank you for those really comprehensive insights, Nita. So now I'd like to introduce Tony Battaline, the Chief Executive Officer of Australian Grape and Wine, to discuss their strategic engagement with Indian industry bodies and trade to further develop the Australian wine category in India. Tony has had a distinguished career working in the research, policy and agri-political space. As a major driver of strategy for the Australian wine sector, Tony has played a critical role in the development and implementation of a comprehensive market access strategy. And he's overseen biosecurity, research and development, and industry policy and strategy to further the interests of Australian wine producers.
Hello, today I would like to talk a little bit about the Australia-India Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement, and specifically what it means and where to next for the Australian wine sector. And I'm speaking to you with the perspective of someone who was very involved in the negotiations. So I was in a lot of discussions with the Trade Minister then, Dan Tehan, during the whole process. So you can say I'm intimately involved in where we got to, and I've got some ideas about where we go to next. It's very clear to me that, and I think it should be clear to all of you, that we didn't get an ideal outcome from these negotiations, but we've got a lot better than any other country has ever done before. And it's quite likely that no one will get as good as we've had for some time to come. So basically where we ended up was a minimum export price in two categories. So we're looking at, for products for value over $5, we're given a phase down in the tariff rates from 150% to 100% on entry into force, but then a reduction down over 10 years to 50%. So quite a significant reduction from that very, very high level that we have now. And then we have another category of a much higher value product. And of course, high value product and premium product is we are targeting in India. And these are over $15, and they'll decrease down to 6% on entry into force, phase down to 25% over that 10-year period. So significant reductions. There is one other aspect of the agreement that's not well known, and that's if anyone else who's negotiating with India, and many of you don't realise, but the European Union just announced that they're re-undertaking their negotiations. They announced that last week, and if we get they get a better deal than us, then we also get the same deal. So with any luck, they'll negotiate successfully, and we'll come out better than this. And the next point is that there are further negotiations that are going on, and hopefully we'll get a better deal out of those. Obviously, the Indian wine market is quite small for us at present. So we all know where we are now, and in only a $12 million export market. And to put that into context, we're $1.2 billion into China. So it's got a long way to go before it meets that. But we've seen a big increase even in the last couple of years. So we saw a big increase in both value and volume from a very small base. So there is potential in that market. But it's not a long-term fix for China. $1.2 billion, 120 million litres is a big ask. We still have very high state taxes. So these benefits we get from the free trade agreement, they only impact on the actual tariff, the import duties. So taxes still remain on top of that. India also has very difficult logistics issues. So actually just getting the product through customs is hard, but getting it to your marketplace is even harder. And one of the things that's very clear is wine's a very small category within India. So beer and spirits are much higher in both value, volume, and popularity. So it's not going to be a market for everyone. The other thing that became very clear to me a couple of weeks ago is that taste profiles are very different to other markets. So you need to do your consumer research when you're going into India. Just don't assume that what you sold in China or what you sell in the UK is going to be saleable within India. It's a market that relies on trust, and you need to build those, and you need to build relationships before you enter into the market. And what we've heard from the people already in the market, that you must work with trusted distributors and don't overpromise in what a current logistic challenged environment. We all know the difficulty there is in getting ships and containers for export, and that's not going to redress itself within the next 24 months. So it's going to be till the end of 2024 before we see more freedom in movement of shipping and containers. So we can't make promises that we can't meet. One of the things that we're working very strongly on are collaborations with the Indian wine sector. So we're looking at how we can use both our technical expertise to build a wine as a category in India. And I think it's something that we should bear in mind, that we need to work with the Indian industry on this. We know that a strong collaborative relationship improves our ability to advocate for policy, technical and regulatory improvements within India. And we know that it gives us a bigger chance in reducing import tariffs as the next negotiating rounds for the free trade agreement continue. So one of the things we're starting to do is how we can expand those government-to-government relationships with the aim of building that cooperation. And there was a side letter within the agreement that looks about developing those relationships. We started direct engagement with Indian industry bodies and the government bodies a few months ago. And one of the first activities under this project has been to initiate direct industry engagement. And highlight both the industry wine sector's strong regulatory and technical capabilities, but also building trust in our product and its safety when it gets into India. So we organised a delegation of senior industry people from the top 3 or 4 biggest companies within India to come out to Australia. And we aligned these with the Wine Industry Technical Conference that happened in June. This technical conference was a great success in all respects, but also we were fortunate we also got the Food Safety Authority from India coming out with these industry people and gave us the chance for some close engagement and also better understanding of where our technical capabilities lie. So this is a photo of the delegation, and as I say, it's very important that we had Wine Australia, we had the Australian Wine Research Institute, we had Australian Grape and Wine, as well as the Food Safety Authority and the Indian representatives. And what it gave us was a great opportunity to get together in an informal setting, as well as some formal presentations to demonstrate the capabilities that we have. We also went on industry tours. This is a view from Roland Flat Winery. So we were very kindly hosted by Pernod Ricard winemakers, and it gave us the opportunity to demonstrate that we've both got a different scale of production in Australia, but also that there's a lot of synergies, a lot of things that they can learn as industries and develop. And that technical cooperation aspect was something that I believe that we demonstrated quite strongly during this visit. Since the return of the delegation back to India, we've been in regular contact, and we've been now working with both the Indian industry and the Food Safety Authority within India to look at harmonisation of labelling requirements between the Indian states. And of course, India is like Australia in its confederation of states. Unlike Australia, they have very different restrictions and regulations, which makes it very hard for exporters. So we're already looking at how we can improve that harmonisation of labelling requirements. We're also identified that sampling and the ease of sending samples is incredibly expensive in India, and it's very difficult to get samples through customs without paying prohibitive customs duties and the time it takes. So we've been working with FFSAI to look at those testing requirements for both bulk and bottled wine and how we can harmonise the import requirements, and additionally look at sort of testing requirements so we can minimise testing and just get product in a market. So this collaborative work we're doing has been, I think, very productive. So we're just in the process of collecting detailed information from exporters to show what the problems they have. And we're coming up with solutions about how we can address these. So there's no point when you're developing relationships to just come up with problems. You need to come up with solutions. And this is one of the critical elements that we're doing at the moment. And apart from the samples and the labelling, we're looking at every other technical barrier to trade that we can find and looking at solutions that we can do. Many of these we've done in East Asian markets and Southeast Asian markets. So there's a clear desire from in the Indian wine industry to work with us on technical exchange. Some of the things that we've looked at have been sharing knowledge and expertise, supporting international forums and collaboration. So there's a lot of international forums that deal with wine. India has never taken a very big role in dealing with wine issues because of the very small footprint they have. This gives us the opportunity for us to work together and get up for common outcomes and common positions. And not only will these work internationally, but they can inform the policy and regulatory positions within India and some of their domestic regulation. We've seen there's a lot of interest in India on looking at our wine research and development models, so particularly the way we get the matched funding from the government and the Australian Wine Research Institute and that dedicated facility that works not just on wine but other fermented products. And it leads over the opportunity for collaborative projects. And that's something that's also been identified as an opportunity within the free trade agreement. So it's very important. We now have a clear relationship with the Food Safety Authority within India, but have also established Wine Australia as a trusted wine regulator in their eyes. So in conjunction with Wine Australia and Austrade, we're going to continue to progress this relationship. And we want to is not just influence wine regulations, but also ultimately to establish a wine regulatory cooperation agreement so that if problems do arise in exports, we have a mechanism where we can rapidly address these. It becomes very critical because you don't want a shipment stopped on the wharf while you're going through a technical discussion and testing. It's much better to have a system in place that allows you to get it back to your customer very, very quickly. It's really important that you speak to the right people. And our delegation meeting that we brought out has shown that we've got the right industry contacts. And these are the right people that can not only influence the Indian government, but also can work with their colleagues within India and help drive that relationships. It's really critical that those strong personal relationships continue. The Indians have told us that you can't just expect to go into India and sell a product from day one. You need to go there, you need to visit, you need to develop relationships, you need to work with people and build that trust. It's very much what we did in China in the early days. And until you get those close communications and trust, it's very difficult for you not only to sell wine, but for us to address those mutually impacting trade barriers. And these connections are going to be critical. So what people do at the industry to industry level are just as important for me and my team working with the industry bodies over in India and the government bodies so that we can influence the regulatory outcomes. And it won't be just at the national level. We need to look within the government departments and the states. Overall, we believe that we need to develop the wine drinking culture in India. Currently, it's a very small category compared to beer and spirits, and we need to build the category as a whole. And that might mean a change from how we normally do business. So actually working with the industry and category building type events and activities within India. And it's critical that we understand the consumer preferences. Once again, when the Indian delegation came out to us, they were telling us that the big things, the big influence for them were the sweeter wines, the wines that, the Moscatos. They were the appealing to both the female category, but also to many of the male category as well. The other really interesting insight that we got from the Indian delegation was as no and low alcohol is developing around the world, what's considered low alcohol in India is completely different to the rest of the world. They're used to drinking spirits. And so for them, wine is low alcohol, no matter what the level it's at. So again, the category for low alcohol, healthy drinking is actually going to be what we can produce and do produce at our normal alcohol levels. It's not to say there's not opportunities in some of those other things, particularly the no alcohol where there's a large non-alcoholic consuming part of the population. But it just means that we've got an opportunity with wine that is not open to beer and spirits. So again, I believe that we need to understand those consumer preferences. It means consumer research. I know Austrade are looking at this issue, but building on this to build up wine to grow the category as a whole. And that means working with the Indian industry. The next stage from this, what I consider a very highly successful first initiation, will be a return delegation to India. We'll include Wine Australia, AWRI, so that we continue to build on the initial engagement. So we're looking to develop the timing and details and action of this delegation, but it will happen this year. And we're working very closely with our colleagues in India now, the Ag Councillor in India, Austrade and Wine Australia. So whatever we do is going to be a real collaborative-ish event, and we'll work very closely with the industry to make sure that we can address both the issues you need as well as grow the category within market. I guess just to conclude, some of the issues about India is that it's not a quick fix. India will take some time to develop. There are massive opportunities, but one of the things we need to do is try and get a better deal within the next set of negotiations on the free trade agreement. So we're working very hard to try and open that up for lower price points, and also looking at whether we can get bulk wine within this. We also need to understand that it will take time to build those markets. And India will never be another China, but it could become a really important market for us. But it's very important that we concentrate on what we're good at. And that is looking at premium wine exports. It's looking at building trust and relationship with exporters. And it's taking that time to ensure those relationships are sound. From our perspective, Australian Grape and Wine will continue to look at the regulatory aspects. We will look to harmonise labelling. We will look to simplify labelling. We'll look to simplify certification, testing, and the sending of samples, so that we can make it, when you're in market, that the companies can do what they do best, and that's compete in a fair, open, and transparent marketplace. So there are great opportunities in India, but it will take time, and we need to go into eyes open. Thank you very much.
Going eyes open seems to be a theme. And just a reminder that Tony will be available at the end of this session to answer questions, along with representatives from Austrade and Wine Australia. So if you have any questions, please add your questions to the chat and we'll do our best to answer them within today's seminar, or we'll be in touch after if we can't get to them in time today. So now our next speaker is John Southwell from Austrade to discuss the opportunities available for exporters in this market. John recently commenced as Trade and Investment Commissioner, responsible for trade in food and beverage, including wine of course, agribusiness and consumer products into India and South Asia more broadly. He has extensive experience in providing advice to aspiring food and beverage exporters and Australian companies in market on obtaining import licensing and navigating Indian food standards. He's played a leading role in negotiations with India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan and Bangladesh to improve terms of trade for Australian agricultural products, including wine, fruit, grains, pulses and oilseeds.
Hello there, my name's John Southwell and I lead the Agri-Food and Consumer team of Austrade in South Asia. I'm pleased to join you for this webinar series in conjunction with Wine Australia with my colleague Ellen Young, Senior Global Engagement Manager, Austrade, to talk about the opportunity for wine in India, our role and the support that we can provide. I don't propose to cover the Indian market in detail, given that this has been covered in previous sessions, except to note that despite the challenges of COVID, the fundamentals of India remain unchanged. Wine consumption is projected to grow by 8% per annum to 2024, and the outcomes of the Australia-India Economic Trade Cooperation Trade Agreement presents significant potential for further growth in the economic relationship between our countries. Reduced tariffs and established trade links means that Australia is well placed to meet India's growing demand for premium wine. The Australian Trade and Investment Commission, or Austrade, promotes Australian trade, investment, tourism and education to the world. We deliver services to grow Australia's economic prosperity. We're experts in connecting Australian businesses to the world and the world to Australian business. Our global network turns local market connections and insights into valuable export and investment support. And in conjunction with our our onshore team, we link Australian businesses to global export opportunities and provide market and industry insights, making it easier for businesses to go global. In South Asia and India more broadly, my team are dedicated to optimising existing business networks in market and establishing new ones, helping exporters, investors and buyers to navigate global changes and mitigate risk, and helping Australian businesses and industry to identify and take advantage of trade opportunities in the region. Our flagship program is the Australia-India Business Exchange, which is aimed at increasing trade and investment links with India. And to help business leaders grasp new opportunities, Austrade is hosting a ministerial mission to India from 26th to the 30th of September 2022. The mission will help you explore fast-changing markets, make valuable contacts and find potential partners. It will focus on a number of industry sectors, including agribusiness and food, with a dedicated substream on wine. This will be an intensive 5-day program spanning India, and it will be led by Senator the Honourable Don Farrell, Minister for Trade and Tourism. It will include business matching, expert market briefings and high-profile events designed to trigger partnership opportunities. The program will be tailored to the interests of the participating companies, and we will take you on industry site visits that help you understand how markets work, and you'll meet officials and industry representatives who can explain how exporters and distributors typically work together. In terms of other support, Austrade's Export Market Development Grants Program helps Australian businesses grow their exports in international markets. These grants encourage small and medium enterprises to market and promote their goods and services globally. It helps between 3,000 and 5,300 Australian medium and small and medium enterprises start or expand their export businesses. It's an eligibility demand-driven program, and grants are available over three stages or tiers, being SMEs that are ready to export, SMEs that are exporting and expanding, and SMEs that are exporting, expanding and making a strategic shift. Applications closed for the latest round for Australia's longest running grant program at 4 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday the 17th of August. I also note that exporters can access support through Export Finance Australia. As the Australian Government's Export Credit Agency, it plays an impactful role in financing Australian exports and interests, including overseas infrastructure development. Turning to India, it's a promising market in times to come for wines at the right price point and for businesses that are pragmatic, patient, persistent and passionate. But remember, India is a continental market and you need to go deeper than the headline figure of 1.3 billion people. To tap into opportunities, our businesses need market entry strategies tailored by state and city. India isn't going to be the overnight replacement for other large markets in the region. It requires long-term commitment, careful partner selection, and an understanding of the business culture and often a local presence. And you need to build relationships. There are only so many things you can do remotely. Businesses aspiring to export to India and realise the benefits of the trade agreement simply need to be there. So I invite you to come along and join us and think of India, which is starting to deliver for so many Australian companies, with our offices in India's major cities, Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, Kolkata, Chennai, as well as our offices in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. We have the presence and expertise to help your success. My team are looking forward to getting to know you and helping you succeed in South Asia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. So let's now hear from John's colleague, Ellen Young, Austrade's Global Engagement Manager, about how Austrade can support exporters in this market. Ellen has an impressive track record working within the food and beverage industry, with more than a decade of experience in senior marketing and development roles. After returning to Australia late last year following a successful 6-year stint in Singapore, Ellen most recently has held senior positions as the Regional Manager for Southeast Asia at Meat and Livestock Australia and Marketing Manager for Treasury Wine Estates.
Hi there, my name's Ellen Young and I'm a Senior Global Engagement Manager at Austrade, and I'm also the Sector Lead for Wine, Beer and Spirits. It's great to be here today, a part of this webinar. I'm excited about the opportunities that lie ahead, especially in India, for the Australian wine industry. I think that John's given a great overview with his remarks on the market and some of the key points and opportunities that have opened up by the Australian-India Economic Cooperation Trade Agreement. I think that these sessions have been incredibly informative and useful, and I hope that you'd agree with me. I'm briefly going to talk to you today just a little bit about what I do at Austrade as a trade advisor and how I can help support businesses like yours, and also some of the recent work that we've been doing with Wine Australia, a partnership that's very important to us at Austrade. Exporting is complex and it can be challenging, as you all know. Austrade's core role is to simplify the business of exporting by providing advice, developing partnerships with key organisations, providing connections to opportunities and partners, and finding solutions to challenges that we face on the ground in overseas markets. These are the principles we apply each day as we strive to assist Australia's valuable wine export industry to recover from the two twin challenges that we've faced, one being the pandemic and the other being the difficult global trading conditions. At home, Austrade's onshore network, so someone like myself, acts as a link between businesses looking to export to new markets and to grow sales in existing ones by working with offshore posts, associations, and our business development managers in market. As John mentioned, there are a number of programs that Austrade can help support Australian businesses grow and diversify, and all of this can be found on the Austrade website. We work closely with the federal and state government counterparts, including the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and the Department of Agriculture, Water and Environment, as well as peak industry bodies to improve market access for all of our exporters. We also do a whole heap of other activities. So recently we delivered some virtual wine tastings across Southeast Asia, and we gather a lot of market intelligence and we do briefings like this one. We do a lot of customised export services and digital services as well. But we know that there is more to be done, especially for the Australian wine industry, and our work doesn't stop here. We work really closely with some of the industry associations like Australian Grape and Wine Association and Wine Australia, so that we can leverage the very best industry knowledge to develop initiatives to support exporters like yourselves. Recently, we launched in partnership with Wine Australia, the Export Ready Wine Hub, and we'll have all of those details after this webinar for you. The Wine Export Ready Hub is a one-stop shop packed with clear information, templates, and how-to guides around finding buyers, developing an export plan, negotiating contracts, and devising shipping options to navigate difficult supply chain hurdles. I hope that you've all had a chance to log on and have a look at this Export Hub, as we are very proud of it, and we think that early results are showing that it's looking very promising, with the hub getting a healthy number of hits from wineries logging on to access the tool. We've had companies that are just looking to learn about the A to Z of exporting wine, as well as some more seasoned operators wanting to just get some up-to-date tips on boosting their distribution footprint in certain markets. Best of all, this Export Hub is free. And I hope that you'd agree with me. It's a great investment by Austrade, and it's certainly money well spent. So I hope that this gives you a good overview of what we do onshore at Austrade and how we work with all of the industries. Finally, I want to encourage you to get in touch with your onshore trade advisor, so someone like myself, whether they be at Austrade or the Trade Start advisors. We really want to talk to you about how we can best help your businesses and give you the tools you need to enter new markets and to grow in markets that you are already in. Please enjoy this webinar. It's been a pleasure talking to you today, and I look forward to being in touch. Thanks.
Thanks, Ellen. In a really jam-packed session, we finally will have Sarah Roberts, Wine Australia's Regional Manager, Asia Pacific, to discuss some of the Wine Australia's programs, resources and tools to help Australian producers develop their export strategies. Sarah has managed marketing projects in North Asia and the Asia Pacific for Wine Australia for over 6 years, while based in its Shanghai and Sydney offices, but has since returned to her hometown, Adelaide. She previously worked for Moet Hennessy in the UK and in Sydney, as well as Diageo.
Thanks, Prue, and hi everyone. I'd first like to say thank you to all of you for joining this Market Ready webinar series for the Indian market. It developed in partnership with Austrade. There's been a lot of information over the past few weeks, but hopefully you've gained some useful insights to help you make your decisions about exporting to India. I understand that there's a number of you who are considering exporting to India in the next 5 years, and after all of the information that we've just shared, I imagine there are some of you who may be considering perhaps putting India off for another few years. But at this point of time, whichever direction you're looking to go with your export journey, Wine Australia can support you with a number of tools, guides, resources and programs in market. We are currently working very closely with Austrade across a number of our priority markets. So as you can see here, the USA with some specific states we're focusing on, Canada, the UK and Europe, and Asia Pacific with some primary and secondary markets there as well. We are prioritising in these markets our marketing campaigns, importer and distributor promotional support, market entry programs and education initiatives. So at this point, what's next? You've decided to either pursue or India or other export markets. Where do you go from here? So there's a few tools that we have available that can help you. First of all, I'll just touch on the Wine Export Ready Hub that Ellen has just spoken about. So this was developed in partnership with Austrade, obviously, and even for those who are well-established exporters, it's worth checking out because there's a number of tools and guides that might prove valuable in your export journey here as well. Next, you've already met Peter Bailey in the first webinar, so he and his Market Insights team have a number of tools and supportive resources available to you to help you evaluate markets for export opportunity. The first one here is the Export Dashboard. So this dashboard provides interactive and comprehensive data and insights on all of our Australian wine exports back to 2010. It's filterable by destination market, by variety, by value and by volume as well. So really able to be customised to exactly what you're looking for. The next one here is Market Explorer, which is a great comparative tool for any export markets you might be looking to export to. You can look at market attractiveness, consumption data, share of on versus off trade, and other demographic and business data to help with your decision making. The Gross Margin Ready Reckoner is the next one, which looks at how you calculate profit margin based on cost of production, export, market and target price point. And I've seen a couple of questions come through across the last few sessions about FOB to retail pricing. We have a FOB to retail calculator on the website available to you as well, which looks at bottle price on the shelf in international markets for a given FOB value. And lastly, if you still need a bit of extra help, our analysts are available as well to talk to you one-on-one. You can book an Ask an Analyst meeting on our website. Communication is the next one. So we've got a lot of newsletters and guides that we publish, which we really encourage you to sign up to. These will drop straight to your inbox, so you don't even have to search for them. And if your social media is more your thing, you can find most of these news articles on our LinkedIn page as well. Now, Australian Wine Discovered is a great set of resources that we have available. So this education, obviously, is a very important in these emerging markets. So the Australian Wine Discovered modules are available for you online, free to download and all editable. So if you're doing a customer presentation, staff training, putting together point of sale, these resources are all available for you. Later this month as well, we're going to be launching a series of translated modules in some key Asian languages. So these include Japanese, Korean, traditional Chinese for the Taiwanese and Hong Kong market, Indonesian, Vietnamese and Thai. And the last tool I want to just quickly cover for you is the Connect platform. So this is our online, always on virtual platform to facilitate trade and exporter connections and promote the Australian wine category. So in a world that's rapidly become digital over the past few years, this is the tool that we'll be using to support a lot of our in-person events moving forward as well. And lastly, we're here to help as well. So we've got a team all over the world. So please don't hesitate to contact us at any time. We're always here. Just a quick summary of everybody. We've got Paul, who looks after marketing globally. Laura, based in London, who looks after the UK, Europe and the Middle East. Aaron in the Americas. And then we've got Brooke, who's the Global Marketing Operations Manager, and Peter Bailey, who you've already met, looking after market insights based in Australia, and myself and the team for Asia Pacific as well. So please reach out to us at any time. We'll always be happy to help, answer any questions in the Q&A session coming up next. I'd just like to take this opportunity while I'm here to thank our subject matter experts for making themselves available to present and participate in the Q&A series over the last 3 weeks. We hope you've gained some useful insights and are now armed with all the information you need to better understand the India market and the export landscape there. Wherever your export journey is taking you next, we wish you well and are here to support. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Sarah. So questions seem to be streaming in, so we'll most likely need to run a little bit over the hour to get them all answered. If you're able to, though, please stay online to contribute and listen to the discussion. We have Tony, John and Sarah on the line to answer your questions. We also have Paul Turali, Wine Australia's new General Manager Marketing. Paul has more than 20 years' experience in the wine sector and has held leadership positions at multinational listed corporate wine businesses and medium to large private wine companies, including Casella family brands, Peter Lehmann Wines and Pernod Ricard. I'm sure he can offer plenty of advice on exporting. Before we get to those questions, though, let's see those poll results from earlier. I always find these so interesting. So, those that have checked in and I'm looking to the left here because there's a screen here which has the numbers on it. 7% of you have exported to India in the past. 26% are currently exporting to India or will in the next year. 48% are considering exporting to India in the next 5 years. 19% are unsure about the market and want to learn more. So that is not that dissimilar from earlier in this series, which is really interesting in itself. So, getting on to the questions, and if you can actually stipulate who you want the questions to, which people have, which is great. So for John, when does ECTA come into force, and when can we see the benefits?
Thank you very much. ECTA at the moment has obviously been signed by the two governments and it's going through a process of ratification, which in the Australian context means tabling it in Houses of Parliament, a Senate Joint Standing Committee inquiry, and then the government deciding to take binding treaty action. And the same process, although in the Indian context, occurs as well. So both governments need to actually decide on ratification. It's our hope that occurs very, very soon. But obviously, because of the political cycle in Australia, we've just had an election. The process has had to kick off again. But the short answer is hopefully very soon. And once the deal enters into force, benefits will flow.
Great, thanks. And this almost follows on from that. This is for Tony or Paul, though. Do you think we should invest in partnerships now, or should we wait and see when ECTA comes into force?
Look, thank you. I'll kick off and then I'll let Paul have a go. Look, I think we're already investing in partnerships now with India, and I think the opportunity is to move now and move soon. We're seeing a lot of Indian investors actually move into the Riverland in Australia. I was up there 2 days ago, and the amount of Indian interest in purchasing vineyards and looking at investment there is amazing. And I think we'll see that reciprocated. So my advice to everyone is go out, start make the contacts now, start talking to people. We are as an industry, but start now, because the benefits of free trade agreements are not just about what's in paper. They're about the cooperation and the ability to work together that will come from it. So yeah, get in early is my advice.
Interesting. For Paul, do you think this is a market for large players only, or are there opportunities for the rest of us as well?
Well, I guess just to pick up on Tony's point to the last question as well, I think it is an opportunity, or sort of opportunities present right across the market. I think the seminar over the last couple of weeks have shown that there is very significant diversity. I think it's about wineries and potential partners being clear on their channel strategies as well. I think that's really important. But I would thoroughly be backing in any opportunity in India, and I think the sooner we start those discussions around that, the better. So big or small, I think there's opportunities there for all.
So this is a question for anybody, apparently. So whoever wants to jump in. What steps are being taken to promote Australian wine as a category in India? Who wants to answer that?
Perhaps I might jump in first, I guess. So I guess number one is we have our network of business development managers here in India that have relationships with a lot of the Indian wine importers going back decades, including in the city which I'm in, Mumbai. So I guess that's the first one, is just our people-to-people connections. And Tony's obviously mentioned the work that's being done at an industry-to-industry level. The other big flagship piece is our Australia-India Business Exchange, which will be occurring over the course of the last week of September, at which a number of pieces of programs across 3 cities, Mumbai, Delhi and Bangalore, will be occurring around promotion of Australian wines. Advertising is challenging because there's a prohibition on advertising on alcohol in India generally, and that applies across the Federation. But as far as the other parts that we have is around our general social media campaigns and other work with influencers across all of the Tier 1 cities where Austrade has a presence.
I'll just jump in as well from a Wine Australia perspective. We will be focusing primarily on education over the next 12 months. I think we've seen from the past webinars that we've had that education is really important from both a trade and consumer perspective in India. And we'll be working closely with John and his team, and also with Tony and AGW on any other opportunities that arise across the next 12 months as well.
Okay, thanks, Sarah.
And I just think sorry, if I can just add, I think it's really important from our perspective that our activities in India will help both the Australian industry and the Indian industry. We're trying to grow the category. We're not just about trying to take market share. We're about growing the whole category for everyone. So the pie is bigger. And so I think there's a lot of collaborative opportunity down the track.
This one says for anybody as well, so whoever wants to jump in, do so. I'm finding it difficult to connect with Indian importers. What should I do? Is that Tony or John, maybe?
So probably, be very happy to take details of the person after this and put them in contact with our onshore Austrade team, and then the process flows from there. Look, I'd say that my team in India have forgotten more about importing Australian wine than a lot of people will ever know. Just simply because of their relationships going back decades. Again, my one person here in Mumbai actually has me tying up with a couple of wine importers later on this afternoon for introductory meetings, etc. So I think it's one thing where that's where we actually have our value proposition as Austrade, is those in-depth connections within market. Again, going back decades. Can I just also elaborate just a little bit as well on the relationship piece. And, you know, don't ever wait for a trade agreement to be signed or even enter into force before starting a relationship. India is a relationship-based culture, and it's a series of cultures, but it's a relationship-based market. So you need to start your work early for the benefits down the track. It's no use coming over and expecting to come back with a signed deal. You need to start building that relationship early for the things down the track, and completely endorse what Tony and Paul have said in that regard.
And this next question is also for you, John. Does religion play a part? For example, do Hindus drink wine?
Look, it's fair to say that across India, look, you know, it's a collection of countries. And there are some dry states, specifically, I guess, Muslim heavy states, but also, say, for example, Gujarat, where the current Prime Minister is from. The manufacture and sale of alcohol is actually prohibited under that in that state. So religion does play a factor, but also I think it's probably fair to say that state by state, regardless of the religious proclivities of that particular state, it does change depending on where you are. In fact, what my family and I have realised over the course of the last week and a half is that Mumbai is a very different place in culture to New Delhi. It is very different. It's not the same place.
Mm-hmm. So this is for Wine Australia, so for Paul or Sarah, or both of you. Thanks for the information, but I don't think India is in our plans for now. Are there any planned activities in other Asian markets?
Yeah,
you jump in.
Yeah, so we're currently going through a process of what we call our market attractiveness matrix. So we're having a look at that and trying to break that down into both premium and more commercial opportunities. So we're a fair way down the track. I would hope we'd have something to share in the coming weeks. But the answer to the question is yes, there is a lot of activity that is being planned across Southeast and into Northern Asia as well. So there's a new ambassador who's just gone into South Korea. There is an ambassador about to be appointed in Japan. And we look at closing and how we can resource and structure around Southeast Asia as well to try and unlock some of that opportunity where India might not necessarily be a priority for some wineries.
And just I'd add to that, just keep an eye on the wineaustralia.com website as well, because any opportunities as they arise will always be listed on the website, or sign up for our newsletters as well. The Exporter newsletter will also feature any opportunities as they arise.
Great, thanks. And as we're getting towards the end, we've got one last question for John. Are there opportunities in other markets like Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, or is it best just to focus on India?
Look, it's fair to say that, yes, there are opportunities. Of course, with the current state of the Sri Lankan economy, that is much more of a challenge, both for the people there, but also for Australian exporters. But it is something where pre-pandemic, Sri Lanka as a trading nation was at the little engine that could, and we do hope sincerely that it will actually return to that state, both for Sri Lanka, but also for the partnership which we have. Bangladesh probably less so, but those markets, and again, I think I mentioned in my contribution that my team extends both in relation to Sri Lanka and Bangladesh as well, and for that matter, the Maldives. And we stand ready to support with our onshore colleagues Australia's wine and other agricultural produce exports.
Okay, good to know. So that, as I say, was the last question, and we're nearing the end of the presentation. So on behalf of Austrade and Wine Australia, we'd like to thank our presenters, Nita Kapoor from International Spirits and Wines Association of India, Tony Battaline from Australian Grape and Wine, from Austrade, John Southwell and Ellen Young, and from Wine Australia, Paul Turali and Sarah Roberts. And we'd also like to thank the consumers and trade representatives we interviewed in Mumbai, New Delhi and Bangalore for providing their insights, perspectives and advice about this market. So today's session has been recorded and we will email you a link when it's live on the Wine Australia website. There are also a number of guides and resources along with the presentation packs for India available for download. If you have any further questions about this briefing series or other markets, then you can please email us asia@wineaustralia.com and we'll direct your question to the relevant area. So that's asia@wineaustralia.com. Thanks again for watching and participating in our Market Ready India series briefing. We hope these presentations, along with the trade and consumer interviews, have armed you with information to better inform your decision making about this growing market. Whether you're considering entry or expansion strategies in India or have decided to focus on other export markets for now, we wish you every success. Thank you.